The following podcast contains adult content. It is not suitable for minors, professional settings, or the faint of heart. The stories you're about to hear are recorded live at Petra's in the historic Plaza Midwood, Charlotte, North Carolina. FOREPLAY Goes South is open mic storytelling. Hosted monthly by Metanoia, attendees share their intimate, sultry, salacious tales.
So it was my first year in college. This will be a short story, I think. I went to an all-women's college, but kind of let me back up a little bit. This is an ode to military, active and veterans, because I've been with Army, Navy, Air Force, one Green Beret, a Coast Guard, he was forgettable, and a Marine.
Thank you for your service.
But in the spring of 2000, I was still relatively a virgin. I hadn't had sex. I'd done other things. I didn't have a whole lot of experience yet. This is when I found out the Marines are all-terrain. He literally ruined it basically for all other men after him. I didn't know it yet at the time because I hadn't been with a lot of anybody else, but soon I would know how he ruined it for everyone else. So it was my first year in college. I went to an all-women's college. In high school, they thought if you go to a college with boys in it, you're not going to graduate. You're too sex crazed. So you have to go to an all-women's college. At the time, I hadn't yet explored the same side of the fence, so I was kind of frustrated with my life. My roommate was out. She was in class. I knew her schedule. And it was back, and I'm going to date myself, but this is back during the days of AOL. Yeah. I was trying to log in to do something or other, and if you remember the modem thing, the and my boyfriend was like, really? No, like, I was stressed. I wanted to throw the computer. He was like, I'm going to offer you some relief. Can you take a break? I was like, sure. So he starts kissing me, starts undressing me. We start moving towards the edge of the bed. We're kissing. He says, can I try something new? And I'm not a bitch. I'm like, yes. So he sits me in front of him. So I'm straddling him. And mind you, I left this out. He's 5'5", built like a Tonka truck. Like he is like a square little dude. We're making out a little bit. I'm getting all handsy and things like that. And all of a sudden he goes, don't scream. And he leans back. And he pulls me up onto his chest. Now I'm sitting on his chest. And I'm like, whoa. That escalated quickly. And then he does something I will never understand how. I was probably 100 pounds lighter back then. He sits up. Now my legs are dangling in the air like a baby deer. I'm facing upside down, like my collarbones on his legs. I'm like, what the fuck? And he starts to just go out to town. Yes, I started to melt in an upside down position. So he was one of those guys who would subscribe to the philosophy of if I die, I die. So after a few minutes of me dangling my legs all awkwardly in the air and him going to town, he leans back and sits me on his face. Now, this is the side of the bed, my hands are on the wall, I'm kind of going to town, if he dies, he dies. And I'm doing my thing, I'm doing like the hula hoop and the things, all the things I kind of read on the AOL chat rooms that you should do, because I didn't have access to porn. And in one of those moments, I just happened to like glance down because it was wetter than I'd anticipated. And I saw blood. So I go, babe, I'm bleeding. And he's like, it's just your period. Keep going. This was my introduction to kink.
It's like steak, right? Little blood never hurt nobody.
Exactly. So the OCD that I am, I keep going for like a second or two, and I'm like, wait. And I start counting, when's my cycle? No, it's not time for my period yet. So I kind of like stop for a second, and I take a look, and his nose is not where it's supposed to be. So I'm like, babe, it's not my period. Him, being the Marine that he is, pops his nose back into place. He reaches to my desk, grabs 2 tampons, sticks them in his nose. Get back up here, we're not done. So this was how a Marine ruined it for all other men.
The year is 2003. The place, NC State University. Specifically, a dorm room about the size of this stage from here to the other side of the carpet. And I had been broken up with recently, so I'm being a sad boy, watching Napster porn on a crappy old laptop. Yep. Chasey Lane, I believe, this particular evening. And my roommate at the time was this dude named Nick, and Nick was a good little Christian boy. He was very sweet, and then he also got broken up with, and something changed in Nick's little Christian brain, and he decided he was going to live his life a little bit. So, the context in which this happened, not great. So I'm by myself, and my cell phone rings, and it's Nick, and I ignore him because I don't particularly like Nick. He listened to praise music on speaker while I was in the room, and I could hear it through the headphones. There was reasons not to like this dude. So Nick calls me, I ignore it. And P.S., the phone I have does not flip. It's got a screen about yay big. It is 2 colors, green and black. So, if there's anyone under the age of 30, after Nick fails to call me on my cell phone, he then calls me on the landline, which we have in the dorm room. The landline does not have caller ID, so I'm like, this might be somebody who isn't Nick. I'm going to pick up the phone and take my chances. But of course, it was Nick. And Nick's like, hey man, I drank some champagne tonight. First time. Got a little bit drunk. First time. Picked up a girl at a party. Absolutely the first time. So, wait, hold that thought. So he calls me up and he says, hey man, are you in the room right now? I said, Nick, you're calling me on the fucking room. Of course I'm in the room right now. So he says, can you be somewhere else? And I said, no, Nick. This is my place. Why do you want me to go somewhere else? Keep in mind, this dude had been basically dating this girl since age 13. She broke up with him 6 days ago. I wasn't expecting anything from Nick. So he tells me, I picked up this girl. I would like to bring her back to the dorm room to have my very first sexual encounter of all time. And I said, I'll just pretend like I'm asleep on the top bunk. Whatever you guys want to get into it. I'm not leaving. Take your fucking chances if you want to. Nick says, I can live with that, brother. So, here's me, top bunk, arms folded across my chest like a little vampire. And about 20 minutes later, Nick spends 5 minutes trying to open the door. Eventually he gets it. And he comes in the room with a girl. I only see a little bit of a silhouette. I couldn't pick her out of a crowd. I couldn't tell you how tall or how big she was or anything like that. Just, there's a girl in the room. Door gets shut, door gets locked. And I immediately regret not going somewhere else. Because it literally takes them 4 minutes to go from this corner to like right where I'm standing because they're sucking face so loudly and so awkwardly, they trip twice from there to here, twice. Did I mention Nick was a complete fucking virgin? Like, no hand job, no blow job, nothing at all in his life. At least that's what he told me. So eventually they get to the bottom bunk. And I'm still laying there, arms crossed, having a little bit of an existential moment. Because I don't have a girl drunkenly trying to suck my face on a Saturday night. So they get in the bed. The whole thing lurches because the bunk beds were very wobbly. So like this, if you touch the bed, it's this much motion. And I'm at the top of the bed, so I'm experiencing this much motion.
He needed you for counterbalance.
Yes, yeah. I probably did help the traction situation out a little bit. So I'm laying there, and at first it's, ooh, smooches and stuff, familiar noises. It's very wet. It doesn't sound like either one of them knows what's happening down there. And then all of a sudden, and I'm like, thank God for Nick. At least something good came out of college for this poor bastard. This continues, and I'm laying there, just vibing out, enjoying the moment. Still wishing I was somewhere else, but I was like, I'm making the best of it, And then the first words that come out of this girl's mouth that I ever hear, one of like the three things she says that I ever hear out loud. Put it in my ass. Now, the challenge. Again, total virgin. I don't even know what's happening down there. But there's still this swaying motion continues happening. And then I hear like yeah. So I'm like, all right, something's happening. I don't know what. I wish it wasn't. I wish I could just sort of leap from the bed and go somewhere else. But I stay. And then this continues. And then I hear the most terrifying sentence I've ever heard in my entire life. Nick says, I don't know, to her, to me, just out loud. He starts by saying, not a word, just a, ooh, this kind of thing. And I'm like, that's not a sex noise. That's not what's supposed to happen. And then he says the worst sentence ever, which is, oh my God, you're shitting on me. You're shitting on me. Yeah, I'll give you a moment to process. Okay. At this point, exactly. At this point, the challenge is not, I'm sad, I'm bored, I wish I had a girlfriend, any of the things you experience as a junior in college. The challenge then became, I cannot stop myself from just laughing my fucking ass off. And like, I'm a big laugher, like when I get going, it's full body, it's like way more than this. It's a lot of motion. So I sort of like put my hand over my face and curl into the fetal position. I try to make myself very small so I don't just like ruin this, whatever's happening down there, any more than it has been already. And then between the motion of the bed and me racking myself with laughter, I fall off the bed. Still little egg. I'm not sprawled out or anything. And I basically do a fucking cannonball onto the futon, which is right next to where Nick and this poor girl are. They're drunk, ashamed, and completely covered in shit. So, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna spin the pot. So when I got to Charlotte, I was a stranger in strange land. I passed through here. I had a handful of people that I knew kind of like superficially, but nobody really crazy. So I start, anytime I get into the community, especially when I go to different play spaces, I treat it a lot like, you know, going into like a dojo. Anybody here do jits or anything? No? Okay. So normally when you go to do jiu-jitsu at a place like, you know, if you're travel training, you go in there, you just roll. You get good training in, but you don't go for submissions because you don't want to be that dick. You know, you start like bodying everybody and on the mats, like it's just rude. It's kind of disrespectful. You know, you really don't go for something that somebody feeds you. So it's the same thing at like a kink event. You know, you don't really know anybody. Just sit back, people watch, do your thing. So I'm normally very choosy with my pickup play. But one of the things that I will always make an exception for are switches. I love switches, especially switches that are top leaning. And the reason that I do that is because it is a very service-oriented thing. And you'll get these switches that people will very quickly forget. And they're like, oh, top me, do this, tie me up, beat me, you know, do these mean things to me, you know, force me to your will. But they're offered very little opportunities to actually submit or bottom. And that's generally not fair. So I'm very choosy about that. So I met a friend here, and you know, I liked the diligence and the labor that they put in to really making sure that not only do they take care of the bottoms that they work with, but they do it well. And they're like just a genuine concern to make sure that not only is it safe, but it's also what they need and what they want. So I'm like, hey, game time. I'm all about helping you out. What can we do? So we negotiated, and we set some things up, and we did some play. And and for those of you who know me, I'm very methodical about my pickup play. Like I have my idiot sheet and everything. Everybody humors me. They fill it out. I like that. I'm telling you, like lists are like candy for autistics. Love that shit. Because I can keep it. You can keep it. We can monitor the records of it, and so on and so forth. So, you know, and one of the nice things about playing with a switch is it's somebody that's kind of been to the puppet show and seen the strings on both sides of the fence. So they're excellent communicators, and that is something that, again, helps somebody who doesn't know you very well kind of read into the situation and be very fun. Because then you feel safe. If I feel safe, you feel safe. Golden rule for me is the more easily you can tell me no, the more I trust you when you say yes. So, yeah, you can write that down. So we go to play, and, you know, my play when I do scene work is predominantly platonic. Like if they have toys or special things they want to use, I'll do, but I don't get naked. I don't do sexy times. So for me, I like to kind of have a separation of church and state if church wasn't a terrible thing that ruined lives. So this is true. So, you know, which is great because that person is very mindful and very, very respectful of it. So we go to play. And it's very simple. I do like a 15-minute session. So it's a 5-minute warm-up, just get everything, get all the blood flow going, everybody kind of warm and fuzzies, and then you move in, do about play. Now, part of it is you pick out your toys. So I have a whole bag full of goodies. It's like just a slutty Home Depot in there. And so they get to pick 5 toys. They get to try 5 toys, and then there's various hand implements. You can get slapped, you can get punched, you can get elbowed, you can get knee strikes, you can get kicked. And at the end of it, you get 2 spicy strikes from whatever you want to pick. So I tell you, watching somebody walk over to my box, in a very non-sexual metaphor, and pick out implements with like a look of sheer joy, like just giddy as shit. It's just very heartfelt, very affirming. And it's something that I appreciated because again, like for me, I'm not a sadist by nature. I don't like, people kicking and screaming and crying and wailing in pain does not give me a stiffy. I don't honestly pitch a tent at all when I play. It's very service oriented. So for me, where I get off, my kink is more of a self-efficacy thing. I like it when somebody else has a good time. If somebody else is having a good time and they're checking all their boxes and they're getting their bell rung, I feel great. because then I feel like I did something good. So they're very, very just facially present and body posture. I'm telling you, like it's the small things, like watching somebody when you reach up and you curve between their shoulder blades, you kind of crest the scapula, run up the neck, just below the base of the neck, grab yourself a nice handful of hair, check to see what time it is, and you watch that head arch back, the mouth open, small gasp comes, and then you just see them just kind of buckle a little bit. Like that is good because it's roadmap. It's like, that's a good thing. You do that. I like that. So playing with them has probably been one of like the highlights of my kink experiences here in Charlotte, because I've always felt safe. I've always felt like there was open communication, and we built from it. So there was an immense amount of gratitude that I had from playing with people who not only understood what my limitations were and knew how to monitor my boundaries, but they knew how to effectively communicate theirs and work in live feed to kind of like find that middle ground that works for everybody optimally. So I think the whole point of this story, one, is for obviously gratitude to this lovely human being, but also to kind of display the effectiveness that you can run into, because I think that's where a lot of people run into the issue is, and I was talking to somebody about this earlier, to where they feel that engaging in sexually explicit scenes mandates dating, or it mandates a power exchange, or doing pickup play mandates a power exchange, or so on. Or we think that everything has to like tether. It's like some kind of like kinky happy meal where it's like everything has to come in the box. It doesn't. It's very carte blanche. You can kind of like pick out, or a la carte, what you want. And that's important to remember, because it's what is it that you need to get? What is it that you want? And can other people facilitate those things that maybe that person can't put into play? And then kind of taking that dynamic and that exchange and that rapport at face value and cherishing it for all the right reasons. And sometimes we forget about that because we get hell-bent in our brain, like, I want this thing. And people in hell want ice water. And that doesn't always work. So, openly communicate with one another. Have gratitude for the people that you can play with. Not only play with, but play with safely and consistently. And, let them know that they're special every now and then. And maybe to make them squirm as well. That might have been a reason.
Audience, so we'll see how this goes. Bear with me. It's not the first time I've told a dirty story on stage. In fact, I won first place on that dirty story. Whole box of vibrators. So I thought I'd talk about a subject that I get to be the probably only person in the room it applies to. I don't know. Are there any other amputees in here? Nope. Pretty normal. So I don't know if you all know amputee is a fetish. People know that amputee fetish? Anybody heard of an amputee fetish? Well, good, I get to rock your world. So a lot of people, fetishize different parts of the body. Some people are a boob person, some people are an ass person, some people are a big cock person. But there is an entire subculture that's particularly attracted to amputations. These get very specific, mind you. We're talking whether it's a below knee or above knee or an arm. Even myself, as a hemipelvectomy, say that 10 times fast, is a specific genre of amputee fetishes. So some people have issues with these guys. I've had issues with some of them, but I'm always exploring and willing to check things out, meet new people, let them try me. And a couple particular ones come to mind. So when I was living in Los Angeles, I went on a blind date with a guy. You never know what you're going to get, who they are. And this guy ended up being an amputee fetishist. Not that often do I have a blind date that ends up being an amputee fetishist. But he was very interesting. So his particular fetish of the amputation is the fact that he himself wants to be an amputee. I know, right? Mind blown. So when we were playing around, my amputation area was very exciting to him. He also decided he needed to wear a plastic boot to make him feel more like he's missing his leg as well. Yeah, it was good times. It was interesting. I was like, the sex was, but I think the experience and observation of this amputee fetish in his natural environment was very interesting.
You're a scientist, right?
Ethnographer all the way. Somebody's got to investigate these things, and it might as well be me. So he was cute. I liked him a lot, but I think he was a little wrapped up in his own issues, his own things, whatnot. One of the most interesting things about amputee fetishists is they know a lot more about amputation, prosthetics, and other devices than amputees do. So if you need advice in your future life, just find one of them and they'll tell you where the good parts are, how to sell them online, so on and so forth. Which reminds me also, I'm sure many of you have experienced Facebook. Now, that was an interesting experience when it went live to the public outside of the college students, because all of a sudden, all the fetishists were on there. And I was friends with a few of them, which actually turned out to be beneficial, because at one point in time, someone had stolen all of my Facebook pictures, created a fake profile, was posing as an amputee lesbian who liked Twilight. That was the worst part. Not to shame those who like Twilight, that's fine, but it's just too much teenage angst without any sex for me. Luckily, I was friends with an amputee fetishist, and he said, I saw your picture on someone else's profile and managed to get it resolved. So the next big amputee fetish that I connected up with, he knew me back in the days of Yahoo profiles. I don't know if any of you ever did those. He had found me again on Facebook and was messaging me. And he was being really sweet. He sent me some maple syrup. And then he sent me a really cute bra and panties to wear and take pictures in. Big fan of looking at my cute little stump. And then we started a romance. Now, at that time I was in Los Angeles, and he was in Connecticut. He was in Connecticut on a maple syrup farm. So I start this romance with a maple syrup farmer amputee fetishist.
This is so niche.
And is it a food story, or is it a fetish story, or is the maple syrup going to come back into the story? So I decided to flip everything upside down and do something completely different. I moved to Connecticut, to the middle of nowhere, to live on a maple syrup farm with an amputee fetishist. Seemed like a good idea at the time. I like to be unpredictable.
So what was maple syrup? Because that really sounds good.
Oh, it was good maple syrup. He tapped his own trees. Hard-working man. He also was the lad who set up a beautiful crutch holder on the back of my chair. Always love a man that has a machine shop, you know. So I moved there. Things were okay. But then he started spending a lot of time with an excavator. I didn't know my competition was going to be an excavator. Who could see these things, right? Amputee fetishist, maple syrup farmer, excavator. So after I proceeded to kind of out him to most of his family, like you do, because where's this random amputee girl that's shown up and moved into his house? How does this make any sense? Well, he actually really likes women with no legs. You should know this about your son. After all that, and finding that the romance kind of wasn't there, and as big of a dick as he had, he didn't know how to use it well. I would occasionally, like hop around to excite him, wear tight clothing, and just be cute. But it didn't compete with the excavator. Eventually, it sizzled down, and I left and moved on. And I can't say I've had an amputee fetishist in a while. So for those of you that are interested, you let me know. Thank you.
This episode of Foreplay Goes South podcast was recorded and produced by event host and podcast creator Metanoia. These stories are recorded live every third Tuesday of the month at Petra's in Charlotte, North Carolina. For more information about Foreplay Goes South, follow us at ForePlayGS on Facebook, FetLife, Instagram, and Twitter.